So I'm Lizzie, and as mentioned, I lead user experience at Shopify. That's the experiences that we build for our customers and the teams that build them. So that's teams of product designers, researchers, content strategists, and front-end developers. And I also have a second role, which is that I'm the GM of core product, which means I lead the team that builds Shopify's primary back office product. Now, for those of you who don't know Shopify, we are Canadian. I was quite surprised to see that I think I'm the only speaker from a Canadian company on stage today. So I actually live in Vancouver myself. I work remotely for Shopify, so I travel a lot. So it's been really, really nice to spend the last 2 days here, meeting people who, in some cases, I haven't seen in a couple of years. But I would say next year, let's make sure that all of the great companies in Vancouver that are tech successes in their own right are up on this stage sharing their stories as well. So Shopify's primary focus is growing entrepreneurship by building products and services that make it possible for retail businesses to start, sell, and scale. It's possible now to start a business on Shopify from nothing and grow it into a billion-dollar business all on the one platform. And that's something that we're remarkably proud of. I've been with the company for just over 6 years, and it's been fantastic to be part of a team that's turned Shopify from a 140-person team into a 4,000-person team, and has made all of these things possible and turned it from an online store builder into a true multi-channel commerce platform. So Shopify's been incredibly successful in many ways, but we're also a very counterintuitive company in others. Sometimes people look at things like a stat for 4,000 employees and they think that we're a big, stable company. But largely, the company is designed to be continually re-architecting and reimagining itself. And we really exist in a constant state of change, and we want that change to largely come from our employees. We want to make that possible for the employees to drive change, and as a result, mission is really important. So what I'm going to talk today is about making mission-driven decisions that leads to sustainable long-term growth. But I'll start out by saying there's obviously no one right way to build a company. I've been part of one big success story with Shopify, but along the way, I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of business owners, both on and off our platform. Some have been successful, some have not been successful. If there was one path, we'd all be on it. So give yourself a little bit of slack along the way as you make decisions. Right now, the things that I'm talking about do not include the incredibly important elements of timing and chance. And in general, I call bullshit on any one quick fix that's going to 10x your business. So instead, I'm going to talk today about behaviors and mindset. Because business is a game, but not the kind you're thinking of. So in the 80s, a scholar called James Carse wrote a book called Finite and Infinite Games. The concept is that there's two types of games that we each play in life, finite and infinite. Finite games are defined as games or activities with rules, clear boundaries, and where a clear winner or loser is announced. Infinite games, however, have no rules, no clear boundaries, and the environment in which the game is played is continually changing. The purpose of the infinite game is not to win, it's to stay in the game. And that's a bit of a mind bender. No winning? We use that terminology a lot in startup land, I think. So think for a moment about the companies that you run. Which game are you playing? An infinite game or a finite game? An example of an infinite game comparatively to a finite game is something like the NHL. If you think about the series of seasons that they have as a set of finite plays within a broader mission or purpose, it becomes really obvious that the NHL's purpose is not to care about who wins in any given season, it's to make it possible that the NHL can continue to exist forever. So the question about infinite or finite games and what are you playing is not just one for established companies. It's for all of us to think about. If you have your whole team focused on an IPO or an exit, or killing a particular competitor, you are playing a finite game, and the outcome that you'll get is also finite. If you're playing a long-term, infinite game, however, that's very different. So this is a quote from our CEO. He says this very frequently. He was saying this back in 2013 and 2014 when we had 40,000 customers. And although getting to 100 years seems like a finite statement, it's always been very, very clear at Shopify that we know what type of game we're playing. And of course, there's no suggestion that by playing a long-term or infinite game that you don't have to consider short-term plays. Obviously, you have to continue to play short-term to stay in the game long-term. But if you consider them with a lack of effort and effect around your mission, then you increase your odds of getting knocked out of the game long-term pretty substantially. So if you think of your business as an infinite game in an ever-changing landscape with no rules, it becomes more and more easy to see how important your mission is as part of all of this. Just in case you don't know what a mission statement is, you probably do. It's an action-oriented, long-term vision statement. And they're enormously powerful tools, not simply to be written as part of a business case and then stored away, but lived. And because they live with you, that also means that they change as you change over time. So let's look at a couple of examples of businesses who are mission-driven and have changed and adapted as they needed to. The first example is Patagonia. So Patagonia is well known as a mission-driven company. You see their mission in their products and their services, the experiences that they give to their customers. It's all through their branding. But they actually changed this mission a couple of years ago. Their CEO, Rose Marcario, explained why. She said in the 90s, it was groundbreaking for a company to consider doing no additional harm and to actually look at the impact of its supply chain on the environment. But today, that's not enough. We need to seek less about doing no harm and more about doing good. So they changed their statement. This is a really bold and admirable statement that resonates really heavily with their target market. They simplified and modernized their mission. And by doing that, they took the steps that they needed to directionally stay in the infinite game. Second example is Microsoft. When Microsoft's current CEO, Satya Nadella, first saw the mission, he always felt like more of a goal than a mission. Even though at the time that it was defined, I'm sure that felt like a very far away future. But by the time he joined the company in 1992 as a programmer, Microsoft was already, at least in the Western world, bumping up against the edges of this mission. So after becoming CEO in 2015, he changed it. Reading this, it's easy to see how much of a wider field of play and impact Microsoft are able to have. And if you think about acquisitions that they've made, like LinkedIn and GitHub, that may not have seemed completely obvious to those of us who still consider Microsoft as the wielders of Internet Explorer and Microsoft Office, it makes so much more sense. They've made a remarkable pivot from a finite mission, and they've brought themselves back to being the most valuable company in the world. Last example, IKEA. So IKEA launched with this mission statement in 1943, and they have never changed it because they never needed to. They still felt like they have not achieved their mission or even close. It's evergreen because life could always be better, but it's also specific because they talk about giving well-crafted experiences and happinesses to everyday people's lives. And they've stayed remarkably true to their mission throughout their entire branding, voice and tone over the years. This image is from an IKEA catalog in the 70s, and yet it looks remarkably similar to what you would expect to see from IKEA today. So many business writers and analysts agree, the longest-lasting companies inherently know that they are playing an infinite game. So do these companies, and they are well on their way to becoming a 100-year company too. They each use their mission to adapt and fuel their long-term growth. So my question for you is, as a CEO or a founder, you obviously know your mission, you wrote it. But do your entire team know your mission by heart? I guarantee not everyone in this room does, and I will not make you raise your hands. But there's a real reason that most people in most companies don't know their mission by heart. It's often too long to be memorable, or you saw it when you were onboarding and literally never again. But most importantly, it's simply not used in company-wide directional decision-making day to day, week on week. Because it's so realistic and reasonable to understand how it gets lost over time if it's not constantly referenced. People are hustling, closing deals, chasing opportunities. It happens. And the idea that everybody's team goals sort of loosely factor into the general direction of a company is a risky strategy and a high potential of veering off course over time. So I asked this question because as I was writing this talk, I realized that Shopify is the first company I've ever worked for where I actually did know the mission off by heart. Now, I've worked for companies that I loved, that I helped shape, that I spent many years at. No idea what their mission statement was. And we did well, but I don't see anywhere close to the clarity and focus on decision-making that I do see at Shopify. Every single person, from customer service to engineering to marketing, could tell you the mission. It's on our walls, it's part of our language, it's part of our decision-making, it's all over our office. You literally can't avoid it. And I do firmly believe that that mission focus has helped us make better decisions to stay in the long-term game over time. So I've made my point on why mission is important. But I definitely recognize that one of the key barriers to making this real in a lot of companies is that it's simply too high level and intangible to be helpful day to day in decision making. So the next question is, how do you make it tangible? And I'm going to talk about 3 ways that we have tried to approach this to make mission something that we actually live every day. So the first and the most key part is to distill the mission into a set of questions that you can actually use when you're making decisions day to day. So for us, a key first question was to define who is the central group of people that are most pivotal to us achieving our mission. And for us, it's merchants. That's what we call business owners, entrepreneurs. They are the most central catalyst behind whether we will be able to achieve our mission. And therefore, the questions that we ask ourselves hinge on them. So we'll ask ourselves, in what ways can we make entrepreneurship better in the next 5 years? What are the biggest problems that entrepreneurs are facing right now? And how can we make entrepreneurship a worthwhile and fulfilling pursuit? Now, of course, there are trade-offs as part of all of this. You'll always face trade-offs that all seem like they kind of fit the bill, and they sort of will get you closer to your mission in one way or another. How do you choose? And so for us, we have a decision-making sort of catalyst that we use, which is we ask ourselves, which option will lead to more entrepreneurs in the future? So a very real example of this in the company a couple of years ago was when we started to see some traction with our enterprise product Plus. Up until that point, we'd been very SMB focused. And when we started to see this traction with the enterprise level, one of the very obvious questions and one of the key sort of conventional wisdom pieces is build for one customer and do that well. So the obvious answer was, well, if we only do enterprise products, it's probably pretty lucrative for us. We're definitely going to make more money. And maybe this is the way we should go. There's plenty of problems in the entrepreneurship space for enterprise. But of course, when we asked ourselves the question of, does that lead to more entrepreneurs in the future? The answer was clearly no. And so instead, we've split the company in a way that different groups can focus on different types of entrepreneurs at different stages. We even have a team called Start who focus on businesses that don't even exist yet. There's obviously no ROI on that in the very short term, but we feel like it's directionally very important for us long term for our mission. So the second is culture. And if you distill culture down to a set of behaviors that you reward and punish, it's easier to understand how you can apply it. Short-term thinking is rampant in most companies. And it's because we're all human, and we often incentivize it unwittingly or intentionally. It's rewarding people who get short-term results but damage long-term customer relationships. It's saying things like, we care about keeping a close distance to our customers, but not holding anybody accountable for it. Now, many companies have a set of values that complement their mission. This was covered a little bit earlier as well. These are things that are set by leadership as behaviors that we feel will get our company closer to their mission. And for Shopify, it's things like build for the long term and thrive on change. And guess what? They're on the walls too. But putting them on the walls is not enough. You really need these to be part of everyday decision making. And you'll see culture values come up in things like design and code reviews for Shopify. You'll see it come up in performance, hiring, and promotion decisions as well. So it really is something that we do live by and make important. Importantly, when we IPO'd in 2015, we were really worried about this effect of short-term thinking and not building for the long term, because we were worried the team were going to think that the IPO was the pinnacle of our journey, that was kind of it, we'd made it now, you know? And of course, that was not true. That was the start. All that had changed is that we had maximized our ability to stay in the game longer, but for the product teams, our work didn't get any better the day we went public. And so we worked really hard to help the team understand that that is not a behavior that we want to incentivize in the company. Even today, if you were caught looking at the stock price in the office, you have to buy Timbits for the entire team. So third, investing in products, services, and experiences that invest in customer trust does not come with a short-term ROI. And that makes them difficult to incentivize in a lot of companies. You're not going to see any magic conversion spikes. There's not going to be any MMR upticks in the short term. But it is absolutely necessary if you are to work towards a mission long term. Everything is easier when your customers trust you. But of course, trust is hard won and easily lost. And especially with SaaS products, you are building a long-term relationship. It's a long play. Now, for us, we found that I talked a little bit about our primary group of customers being the entrepreneurs that actually run the businesses, the merchants. But there's a huge group around them that are partners of Shopify. Tens of thousands of businesses that are everything from marketing agencies to development companies to app developers. And all of them build into Shopify and help our merchants be successful and ultimately help us be successful. And a couple of years ago, we realized that we were losing trust with them because one of our policies had been to release all features to everyone at the same time. And we meant well. Our thinking was that the best possible outcome was to get all of the innovation to everybody as fast as possible. But of course, that undermined our partners' ability to have knowledgeable and trusted relationships with the merchants that they were serving day to day. And so we've started to change our practices over time and try to bring them in more and more to the things that we're building where we can to make it more possible for them to have and build an infinite relationship on Shopify. Now, there's little short-term ROI in us doing this. It's a lot more work. But ultimately, for us, it is an important strategic step in developing better trust with a group that are very critical to our mission. And so to wrap up, these are some of the approaches that we have taken to stay in the game. Some may work for you, some may not. But the more important question is, do your teams know what game they're playing? And does your mission allow them to play the right game? Thank you very much.
I need some traction. You need some traction. Let's get some traction.